Today we're going to talk about the concept of Impressionism. Let's take a look at these three artists to start things off. All three of these are great, well-known artists, but what do they have in common? And what can they tell us about the key characteristics of Impressionism? Impressionism is a painting movement that came out of France in the 1860s that was really a reaction to traditional high art movements that came before, that focused on realism and formality. At the time, Impressionism was a radical art movement because instead of focusing on realism, it focused on capturing a spontaneous moment in time instead of focusing on realistic details and focusing on accuracy. There are five key or components in Impressionism that make it distinct from other art movements and set it apart. You can identify an Impressionist painting or an Impressionist artist by looking at the use of soft or even blurry looking brushstrokes, so there's no harsh lines in Impressionist paintings. Thick globs of paint. In a lot of Impressionist paintings, it often looks like instead of being spread onto the canvas, paint is just globbed on. There's a real texture and a real three-dimensional element to Impressionist paintings. The focus of many Impressionist paintings are often on fleeting ephemeral moments, quick seconds or minutes in time that would otherwise go undocumented in the past. In reaction to the formal portraits and landscapes and still lives of the past, Impressionists focused on depicting relatable everyday scenes, rural environments, idyllic landscapes, and everyday people that you would see walking in the street. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, Impressionism really highlights the interplay of light and color, and how light and color can affect each other and change over time. In fact, many Impressionist painters would often paint outside in a technique called plein air painting to capture how light changed a landscape over the course of several hours in a day. Let's take a look at our first artist, Claude Monet, and the elements of Impressionism that we can find in his work. This painting comes from his famous Haystack series. As you can see, Monet uses soft, feathery brushstrokes and strays away from painting any harsh lines or outlines in this painting. He also doesn't hide his brushstrokes. There are clear textures that come from his lines and movements. The subject of the painting is a simple haystack in a very rustic, rural setting that many people in the general public would be familiar with and relate to. And finally, since this painting was painted using the plein air technique, it's primarily focused on capturing how the light of the sun hits this haystack in the early morning. This is one of Edgar Degas' ballerina studies. We can see how Degas focuses on how light and shadow intermingle in between the brushstrokes. The subject of the painting are ordinary ballet dancers that you might see in a performance. Once again, there are no harsh outlines. All of the brushstrokes are light and they express movement. You can also see the visible texture of the oil paints. And finally, this piece focuses on the interaction of the ballet dancers in the painting in a very brief window of time. Finally, let's take a look at this painting by Mary Cassatt. Her paintings depicted average people in everyday settings, often very casually, And in this particular painting, you can see that she really focuses on the ripples of light reflecting off of the water, really highlighting that characteristic of Impressionism of focusing on light and color. To this point, she emphasizes the movement of the water with very textured brushstrokes. Like the previous examples, there are no harsh outlines, and the painting captures a spontaneous interaction between the two characters in the painting and the ducks. So as you can see, while all three artists are very, very different, they are all still considered Impressionists. And they are linked together through their use of loose brushstrokes, avoiding harsh outlines, emphasizing texture in their paintings, capturing spontaneous moments, often in a brief window of time, depicting everyday places, landscapes, people, and relationships, and focusing on light and color.